just before we kick off, I'll just let you know a little bit about Teen Tours. It's basically a program that we've put together to allow a young person to experience the gallery space. We work together for 6 weeks. They pick an exhibition that they're interested in, and then I mentor them and work together to figure out what their perspectives are going to be and how they're going to share their ideas with you. Teen Tours has been going for about, I think, 15 years at the Photographers Gallery, and there are two reasons that we do it. One is obviously to allow a young person to experience the gallery, and the other reason is to allow you guys to experience the perspective of a young person on an art exhibition. So today's talk has been allowed by the Ashley Family Foundation Trust, who have kindly kind of donated money for us to run this project. And I'm going to stop talking and hand over to Annabel, who I've been working with for the last 6 weeks.
Hi, I'm Annabel, and today I'll be giving you a talk on Anastasia Samoylova's project, FloodZone, which is one of four exhibitions of the Börse Foundation Prize 2022. So I came across Teen Tours because I was trying to find a place to do work experience or some sort of volunteering in an art museum. So I was calling all around London trying to find something, and someone at the Fashion and Art and Textiles Museum directed me to Teen Tours. But the first time I looked it up, it was closed because they were doing some renovations, and I had a little panic that I wasn't going to be able to do it. But I emailed in, and it turns out that I could do it in a few months, and so here I am. I'm in year 12 currently, and I'm studying history of art, and that's why I'm so interested in all of this. I really want to deepen my knowledge in how a gallery works and the process that goes into curating and things like that. So I chose this exhibition out of all of these four because I believe that climate change is a really prevalent issue today, and it's a really current one, not one in the future that we have to deal with in 10 years or 20 years, but an issue that we are dealing with now, evident by all these photographs in the room. And another reason is that this is going to sound very strange, but when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to watch TV on school nights, only on Thursdays for documentary night. And on Thursday nights, me, my dad, and my brother would all sit on the couch and watch David Attenborough. So he became very well known in my house on Thursday evenings. So from a very young age, I was very aware of wildlife and the pressures that we were facing due to climate change. The exhibition itself is made up of more than 80 photographs, and it's an ongoing artistic process. So this means that even though a book has been published in 2019, detailing these photos, it continues today, and Anastasia Samoylova is consistently and continuously adding her photographs to this, because when she puts the camera down, climate change isn't solved, it's not over. So by her continually adding to this exhibition, it shows that the consequences of climate change are continuing and they're not over. She first moved to Miami after living in Moscow in 2016 and began her artistic process by simply walking around and just photographing what she saw. But then after Hurricane Irma hit in 2017, that's when her process began to become more rapid, and she would take more photographs, and the shape of her exhibition started to take place. So the first photograph I'll be talking about is over here. If you could direct your eyes over here. So this photograph is called Gator, and it was taken in 2017. And it was the first photo that I saw as soon as I walked in, and it really caught my eye because as soon as you walk in, this is the first thing that you see, direct eye line from the door. And the first thing that really stood out to me was the perspective, because we're looking at from underneath. Usually with alligators, we see their mouths and heads above the water, and it's this really sinister, scary, ominous thing coming towards you. But being underneath it, it makes it look quite human. We have these hands sticking out here, and we're looking at the underbelly of the beast, if you will, and it really just looks quite vulnerable and human-like. It doesn't know that we're watching us. We're placed behind this glass that you can see with these scratches here, and we're looking at it, but it doesn't know it's being watched. Its head is above the water, and there's a sense of this vulnerability of this animal that usually we perceive as such a scary thing. Also, this color here, though it might seem quite eerie, Miami is swampland. So to someone who knows that, it seems fine. But in the context of this room where we're surrounded by these luscious green colors and with this forest green wall, it seems quite toxic and disturbing. And it almost looks as if the animal is dying, that it's living in this habitat that's being destroyed, which it is. The last thing I'm going to touch on in this photograph is these black spots up here, because even though they are probably just black bits of dirt that have built up on the screen or the glass, it really reminds me of some germs or disease, just as the earth is dying. And one more thing before I do move on, actually, is that we are beneath the animal. We're submerged underneath the water with it, which perhaps is a comment on rising sea levels, which is a very prominent issue in Florida. And scientists have estimated that by the year 2100, the bottom third of Florida will be completely submerged. Now, returning to the idea of these black specks here, and this idea of the water being diseased, I'm going to move on to this photograph here, where we can see these similar white dots completely covering this tree. From the top of where the picture is cut off to its base, and it really reminds me of some sort of rash or disease-like quality. And though ostensibly these two images look like they have very little in common, they actually have quite a great deal in relation to each other. They both show these signs of diseases and dying. They both show these signs of vulnerability. We're looking at this tree. We're looking at the roots of a tree that's been completely uprooted. It's called a deracinated tree, when a tree has completely come out of the ground. And it's not something we usually see, just like the perspective of the alligator is very different. We don't usually see this intertwining of roots here. But it doesn't look healthy. It doesn't look rich with life. It looks bereft of color. There's no warm soil. It's white and gray and crumbling and decaying, which is a very stark difference to the lush green that surrounds it. Another aspect of this photograph is this lump here, which to me really reminds me of a tumor, as if the tree has cancer and is dying and infected, again relating to the alligator photo. Now, another thing about this photo that I never noticed before, and only on my third time analyzing it, is this green sprout down here. And you can lean in a little closer to see because it is very hard to see. But over here, there is just a few leaves poking out. And to me, it kind of resonates as this glimmer of hope, this idea that this tree does have a chance of life, because it looks like it should fall over. The fact that it's still standing is quite miraculous. And as Anastasia Samoylova says, it is grasping for dear life. And this idea that this little sprout of green can save it is very, I think, prevalent to the idea of climate change, that while we can't completely reverse all the damage that we've caused, we can at least stop, or at least try to stop it getting worse. Moving on to this photo here, which was taken in downtown Miami. We have this printed tarp covering up this urban background. Now, this printed tarp is actually a motif that's very common throughout FloodZone. Not the photos in this room, granted, but very common in the whole exhibition with the 80 photographs that are part of the book so far. And it really purports this idea of this false reality that we're presented with. This tarp is covered with this highly saturated, idyllic, vivid green tarp that's purporting this fake reality, this fictional reality of what the world or Miami is meant to be. But in reality, it's very pixelated, facing the wrong way, and it's almost laughable how this is trying to cover up the thing. The idea of that climate change is not an issue, when indeed it is. Another thing I'm just going to touch on is the wood that it's covering up, as deforestation is an incredibly well-known factor towards climate change, and every year we lose 10 million hectares of forestry. Now, the next photo I'm going to be talking about is on the other side of the room, so just follow me. Also, something I did forget to mention about those two photographs over there is that they're often paired together as a diptych photograph. And on the entrance to some museums, they are often, some exhibitions, they're often paired together. And I think that's really prevalent because it shows it kind of encapsulates the whole essence of the exhibition, that this like dismantling this glamorized view of Miami, which is one of Anastasia's main views and aims of the whole exhibition, which is to unveil the truth of what Miami and what climate change actually is, which is also seen in this photograph. Now, this was taken after Hurricane Irma in 2017, and it's called Pink Sidewalk. And the first thing that I thought about this photograph is that it feels very surreal. It doesn't look like it's unstaged. The palm trees have fallen almost at perfect angles, and it creates this almost fake appearance. And the whole exhibition, in a way, does feel quite surreal, and which perhaps plays into the idea that we don't want to believe what's happening is our fault. We don't want to believe that we have to face this, when in reality, we do. Something that I thought was very striking about this photograph is these buttresses here. They seem extremely feeble, and it's almost funny how they could have been thought to prevent these palm trees falling over. If you compare the size of the buttresses to the elongation of the palm trees, it just doesn't seem possible, and it isn't, because here you can see the splintering of the buttresses, and you can see them completely collapsed. And I think this really translates into the idea that what we're doing for climate change isn't enough. What we're trying to do for the environment, it's not enough. It's like these feeble buttresses, it's collapsing, it's not working, and we need to be taking more drastic measures. Another interesting thing about this photograph is the duality of the strictness and rigidity of the buildings and the windows compared to the slanting palm trees. It looks like they should be standing up next to them in regularity with the buildings. And this theme of controlling nature is seen throughout the image, with this manicured grass along here and its restriction, which is seen in London as well. If you walk in suburban neighborhoods, you can see a tree, but it's always cornered off by a piece of concrete. It's not just on its own in the soil, in nature. It is always controlled. And the final thing I'm going to be touching on in this photograph is the lack of human presence. There is no people here trying to help. And I think in the whole exhibition, there is very few people perhaps commenting on how we're not doing enough. Human intervention is not occurring enough in the fight against climate change. The next image I'll be discussing is Barbershop. And I think this is very prevalent for what I was just discussing. And I think this image in itself, having the sole focus of a person, is very different from the rest of the exhibition. There is definitely a lack of human presence in the whole room. Over there, we have a little boy facing the back. Over here, we have the reflection of a woman. And here we have people not facing us and printed on some sort of wall. But this is the only really actual person where the sole focus is on them, apart from the boy over there. But we can't even see her face. The whole image has this element of this lack of confrontation. Her arm completely covers her face, and in her reflection, we can't even see her face. Over here, we have a man making direct eye contact with the camera, yet his hand is blurred and his face is obscured by this plant here. Even this poster here, which isn't even a real person, it's a picture, we only see half her face. And in the background, inside, we can see these people on the walls, but yet they're still obscured by this reflection. The only thing actually confronting us in this image is this fake dog down here, which is actually quite creepy. And I think this lack of confrontation really connects with this idea of climate change, that we don't want to believe what's happening is real. We're in denial, and we don't want to have to face the reality of what is happening. Something else I want to zoom in on in this image are these three items here: a phone, a plastic bag, and a handbag. Can anyone who has a phone put your hand up, please? If you have a plastic bag at home, can you put your hand up? And if you have a handbag or a bag, can you put your hand up? Everyone has them. It's a common part of our everyday life. In our contemporary world, they're all common things to have. But even just these three items are detrimental to climate change, and they all have such huge impacts. E-waste, for one, which is when technology is discarded and no longer used, has surpassed the airline industry in its impacts on climate change. Plastic, which is probably the most well-known material that is devastating for the planet, contributes to 3.8% of greenhouse gases. And this handbag down here could be a reference to fast fashion. And I'm not saying that no one's doing anything. I'm just saying that not enough is being done. And in regards to fast fashion, it's only recently become a very prevalent topic that we're talking about. It's only recently become this well-known fact that fast fashion is very badly impacting the environment. And that's due to this technological world that we're developing into. Social media has become accessible for nearly everyone, at least in the UK. And this idea of fashion companies having direct access to their consumers means that they're able to put these trends as soon as they're available, as soon as they become popularized online. And that means that people are seeing them faster, buying clothes cheaper that aren't meant to last. They're only meant to last the lifespan of this trend before they're discarded. And this is an example of how the environment isn't treated right and we're just discarding everything. And things are attempted to be done. For example, the Environmental Audit Committee proposed in the UK proposed a multitude of possible actions, such as charging an extra 1p for every single piece of clothing that was sold in the UK to go towards better recycling and collection for clothes. However, all of their proposed actions were dismissed by the government. The last two photos I'll be discussing are just behind you over here. Now, not to be blatantly obvious, but we can all see that this picture here is very different from those others in the room. It's not mounted, it's not in a frame, it's completely flattened against the wall, and it's huge. It's significantly larger than the rest of the photographs. And I think this really adds to this immersive experience that we're given. We have the perspective of the artist when she was looking onto this, when Anastasia Samoylova was looking out into this flooded street with this reflection at the bottom, and this is what she was seeing. I think this reflection at the bottom is also rather emotive, and I'm not sure why, but the reflection of the trees really stands out. Something else I'm going to comment on is this stop sign over here, which I also didn't notice the first time I saw it. And I think the fact that it stands out so much is the lack of text in the rest of the exhibition. You can't see it. There's not a lot of text. And this is even slightly obscured by this leaf, but it's there. And I think having a stop sign in an exhibition about climate change sends a pretty clear message that we need to stop what we're doing and work towards a better solution for the environment. Another element of this photograph here is that we can see this is a wealthy neighborhood. There is a gated community and a house with multiple floors, which is just, again, emphasizing that the whole of humanity must stand together if we have any chance to get climate change. It's not about an individual, but it's collectively. Now, what I also found interesting is that these two photographs aren't usually set up together like these two over here. But I think that the way these two fit together is really quite beautiful, with the palm tree falling, coming down with this steel pole here, with this reflection in this palm tree. It connects them together like two pieces of a puzzle, really. And the fact that they're both black and white also really evokes the sense of emotion from the viewer. This photograph is my personal favorite in the whole exhibition because I think it's the most emotive and it really speaks to me, at least. This boy here is actually Anastasia Samoylova's son, and this was taken the day after Hurricane Irma in 2017. And this building is their apartment building, and this is the garage. It's completely flooded. And you can actually see her shadow here. Now, at first, I didn't notice this, and even though it fades into the water and the door and into the darkness surrounding him, I think it represents the kind of fear that she has and her realization that this is the world that he's being left with. This is the world that young people are growing up to inherit, and that something needs to be done about it. Additionally, something fascinating I found about this photograph is that he's wearing a bicycle helmet. Now, a bicycle helmet isn't really going to help you when you're in a flooded garage. And I think it really is a reference to the fact that the actions that we're taking aren't enough. They're not doing anything to help us combat against these rising sea levels. In the UK, we're meant to be free of fossil fuels by 2035. That's 13 years away. Just think about how long that is. That's a very long time. We don't have 13 years to reduce fossil fuels gradually and gradually. We need to take more drastic measures. Otherwise, this is the future that everyone's going to be left with. Now, to conclude my speech, I have written a poem inspired by this exhibition and the growing dangers of climate change. The sound of seashells. Hold up a seashell to your ear, they tell you when you're young. Close your eyes and hold it close, and imagine a stretch of sand, paired with an idyllic sea beside it, a bright blue sky overhead, the smell of sunscreen and salt. Your eyes still tightly shut. You hold the seashell carefully and listen as well as you can. Into this shell of warm honey crevices and elegant flutings engraved, you hear the sea echo through your body and feel the tumbling motion of the waves. But this paradise that you created in your mind when you were a child, a vivid blue sea that sparkles in sunlight, that made you giggle and smile, doesn't capture the rising water or the row of plastic bottles for a mile. You didn't envision the dulling coral, lively colours fading to grey, and you didn't see the colossal oil spill, poison crawling across the bay. Childish bliss is a convenient fairy tale, and one we've all lived in for far too long, because now we're desperately drowning and wondering what we did wrong. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.